Adobe Acrobat Studio, so brand new. Show me all the things PDFs can do. Do your work with ease and speed. PDF Spaces is all you need. Do hours of research in an instant with key insights from an AI assistant. Pick a template with a click. Now your prezzo looks super slick. Close that deal? Yeah, you won. Do that, doing that, did that, done. Now you can do that with Acrobat. Now you can do that with the all-new Acrobat. It's time to do your best work with the all-new Adobe Acrobat Studio.
This is a real good story about Bronx and his dad, Ryan, real United Airlines customers.
We were returning home, and one of the flight attendants asked Bronx if he wanted to see the flight deck and meet Captain Andrew.
I got to sit in the driver's seat.
I grew up in an aviation family, and seeing Bronx kind of reminded me of myself when I was that age.
That's Andrew, a real United pilot.
These small interactions can shape a kid's future.
It felt like I was the captain.
Allowing my son to see the flight deck will stick with us forever.
That's how good leads the way.
Hi, it's Kanika, and I'm back with a brand new season of That's Total Mom Sense, where I interview parenting experts, world-renowned thought leaders, best-selling authors, and trailblazing entrepreneurs on their incredible life stories and mom sense experiences.
Hi, I'm Gabby Bernstein, and you're listening to me on That's Total Mom Sense.
It's me, Bobby Brown, on Total Mom Sense. Can't wait to share my story.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lisa, and you're listening to me on That's Total Mom Sense.
Pandemic or not, these episodes will inspire you to make every single day count. Episodes release on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Join my tribe and subscribe wherever you listen so you never miss an episode.
Hearing the stories of parents, parents for whom, similar to me, they didn't know what to do. Their child was struggling, or their child was a little unsure of themselves. They weren't very confident, or they were just kind of uninterested. And hearing parents use the product and discover the breakthrough that they had with their child, everything from children with learning differences and how well the product worked for that, children who were younger or older, and so I would just pour through it, and my heart would grow, and I'd be like, okay, this is the right thing to be focusing on, and how do we just do more of it to support families?
As moms, we often wonder, am I doing enough for my kids? I'm here to tell you, you are super mama. That's because we have an undeniable superpower, our intuition, and it never steers us wrong. I call it our mom sense. Hi, I'm Kanika Chadda Gupta, and I'm the host of That's Total Mom Sense. I'm a journalist, entrepreneur, wife, and mom of 3, twins plus 1. Now, if I had $1 every time I heard, gee, you have your hands full. On my podcast, I interview influential moms from various industries and cover topics that all first-time parents grapple with, from getting your baby to sleep to screen time allowance, your new normal in your marriage, and how to dedicate time to yourself. Learn and laugh along with That's Total Mom Sense. As we continue to forge on in this new life during and post-pandemic, one highlight has been Homer. I am so honored to have the CEO and president of Homer join me today. With over 25 years of experience in education, Stephanie Dua committed to developing better education opportunities and life outcomes for our children. As co-founder and president of Homer, an early learning brand that builds personalized learning experiences for kids, she's passionate about crafting products that support children and parents on the profoundly personal journey to reading. Homer rejects a one-size-fits-all approach to learning. Instead, the learning app taps into a child's unique passions, teaching them the skills they need to be confident readers who love to learn. Prior to founding Homer, Stephanie served as CEO of the NYC Fund for Public Schools, raising more than $165 million to support literacy and teacher training efforts in the country's largest school district, was senior advisor to the Common Core Standards effort, and worked with the Robin Hood Foundation, helping build 50 award-winning new school libraries across New York. In a modern environment where parents are inundated with information, she seeks to simplify what and who matters most in helping your child reach their potential. She currently lives in Coconut Grove, Florida, with her husband and 3 daughters. Side note, Stephanie's hero is her mother, which is very apropos for That's Total Mom Sense. And her values live on in Stephanie and thrive further still in her daughters, Anya, 16, Siona, 14, and Isla, 11. Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
I am too. Your life story is truly remarkable. I can't wait to get into it. Let's start with how we met. We connected, a few weeks ago and have had several phone calls. And I feel your positive energy and brilliance just shines through. It's so palpable. And I'm sure everyone on your team and anyone new you meet feels this. So
well, the feeling's mutual. I felt the same way about you, Kanika. I just was so excited and inspired by your story and what you're doing to celebrate messages out there about mom's intuition.
Thank you. Thank you. No, and it's so important. And I'm so glad that we're aligning in this way. We also have a very special surprise for you. So stay tuned till the end of the episode where Steffi and I will share that. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. You have built a company that's centered around kids and really fostering a joy for learning. Let's start with your childhood. Tell us about your family, how you grew up.
I've come a long way from where I started. I grew up in a very tiny, tiny country town. Waterford is the name of the town in the Central Valley of California. It's, in that farming area in California. But, I had a very interesting childhood out there. We were really like free range kids. I think there's now a book on this, right? Yes, but, yes. Before there was a book on it, that's the life we lived. My dad, we had a small farm. We had pigs and sheep and chickens and some cows and fruits and nuts. And, my parents had a very traditional marriage. My mom and dad met young, married young. My dad went to college, but my mom did not. She was very traditional. She was very much always creating things, painting, drawing, cooking, canning. She was obsessed with canning, sewing, working in her garden. She would fix the toilet. She would build storage units. She could do anything. And my dad was more quiet. He was a quiet, patient man, is a quiet, patient man, very sensitive, loved to read. He would buy these old books at auction for like 5 cents, when the library was getting rid of old books. And he'd spend his evenings, I always remember, with his pipe reading. So it was my little brother and I. We were 18 months apart. We were kind of like the Irish twins, I think they call them. Maybe not quite so, but we felt like twins growing up. And because we lived in this spacious land, we felt it was just us. So we'd wake up in the morning and we'd go about our day. We had no structure. There were, other than going to school, there were no classes to attend, tutors, sports, or any of those things. It was just kind of us on the farm, exploring and inventing and writing and, all of that. My parents, would just say, make it home at some point, and so it was really just that sense of freedom in its truest sense, and that freedom in country living. And, really through that, my brother became my best friend because it was just the two of us. We didn't have any playmates. There weren't the concept of having a play date was really not possible because no one lived near you. So the logistics of actually having something like that was challenging. So we had our animals and my brother and I. And so I'd have to play Batman and Robin with him and he'd have to play princess dress up with me, and so we were always like kind of moving between each other's inventive play. Sadly, my parents' marriage did not ended up in divorce, and they ended up moving not so far apart from each other and kind of co-parented. And that was a big change for us. I think any family who's, gone through divorce, when you've gone through something that felt so perfect, as a child, to something very disruptive like that. And my mom honestly struggled a lot. And that really informed how I think about being a mom and my choices around career. She, after the divorce, really struggled financially. She had 3 different jobs. She hadn't been to college. So she had been a mom and loving what she was doing, but, didn't have any really technical skills. And so really struggled then trying to kind of assimilate into the workforce after that. And so that was kind of a big impression, I guess I would say, and how I think about all of those and how I thought about all of those choices.
Wow. I want to come back to just living on a farm, because I've spoken to many founders and executives, and I feel like those who had an upbringing where they were raised in an environment like that, where they were outdoors and it was just a free for all, and they could just let their imagination run wild. They've become entrepreneurs in their adulthood. Do you think that that's what it takes? Can we simulate that for our kids?
Oh, yes, I think you can simulate it 100%. It's interesting. I do think there is a connection. I've never studied it. It's a great question, but I do think from my personal experience, what you learn when you have tremendous freedom and really ambiguity as a child. No one's telling you what to do, right? So you have to figure everything out yourself, how you get from place A to place B, what you want to do. There's no one entertaining you. So you learn to tinker, in that purest form. You learn to make things, and sometimes it's dangerous. Like Greg and I would blow up things, we'd use the wrong chemicals together, and my parents would get mad at us, but you learn from mistakes and you get lost. Greg and I would get lost. One time we got lost in the Sierras, for a day because my dad let us go out and hike on our own when we were really young. But we found our way back, that was a little scary, but we did figure out how to get back. We climbed a tall mountain, tried to figure out how to read the land and find our way home. So there is an element of you're not afraid of taking risks, I think is the central theme. You know that you can take little risks and then bigger risks and bigger risks. And you can figure things out as you're taking those risks.
Yes. And then your parents, credit to them that they weren't helicoptering.
Well, and it's interesting because, in many marriages, you come and you have different parenting styles, right? So I grew up in this free range family, where you were dirty and messy and, and maybe you did your math or not, or you did we always read. We were a big reading family, but there certainly was nothing organized. We never went to camp or anything in the summer. And we led a very modest life, but you learned a lot of hard work and you learned how to do hard jobs. And my husband, who's an Australian Indian, he grew up in Sydney or outside Sydney in the country a little bit. But, his parents were traditional Indian immigrants to Australia, right? And so everything was about education. Everything was about, making sure that you had every possible educational opportunity, and my parents were like, you'll figure it out, you'll kind of figure it out. You know what I mean? And so bringing those two perspectives together and trying to figure out how do we parent these kids, how do we think about bringing the best of both to our marriage and our relationship and our philosophy on how we want to raise kids was a really interesting experience.
Yes, I can only imagine. That's great. Okay, I wanted to also ask you, since your parents come from Lebanon, do you remember anything about Lebanon and what was their immigrant story?
Well, so my parents, that's a great question. My dad was actually working. They're not Lebanese. They're not, but we lived in Lebanon. I was born in Lebanon. My dad lived in the Middle East and in Northern Africa. So he was working there. Really, I think he was working for Goodyear tire sales or something, and they've sent him to the Middle East. So we left, before I have any memories of the time, but I always felt a connection to the culture, and I always felt really proud of the fact that I was born in this country that was so beautiful at one point, right? And then very sad, to see what happened to Beirut in particular, the city over time, and really wanting to get back. Obviously with COVID, all of us want to kind of get back out and explore the world. But, there's a part of me that always feels that connection to that area, but I've never been since I was really little. Once we moved to the country, we really didn't travel. Our summers were about staying in the country or going to Yosemite. We didn't really travel that much.
Okay. Yeah. No, but that's great that you had that exposure to another country as a child, because I feel like that molds you too.
It all informs your identity, how you think about yourself and what things you pull at different points in your life.
Right. Absolutely. So you and your mom were very, very close.
Yeah.
Were you a lot like her?
Any daughter, I think, many daughters in that teenage year, you're like, I want to be the opposite of her. I want to just be everything she's not,
Right.
And then, you realize you go through this natural pathway and you realize in your early 20s, you're like, well, she's not so bad. And there's a lot of things I love about her. Yes, there is so much. She was always a very warm and inviting person. So growing up, we would always have these 3 little cots. She didn't have much means, but she was always inviting kids in to live with us. Friends of my brothers that were having a hard time at home, they would live with us for a period of time. Friends of mine that were having a hard time at home, or the parents, were going through a rocky period, they would live with us at a point in time. And she loved Christmas. And so everyone had a stocking, no matter whether you were, really truly part of the family or you were an adopted member of the family. And so, there was a lot of that generosity, is how I think about it. And I think about how important being a generous individual and thinking of others and not just thinking of yourself really embodied my sense of my mom. And I try and carry that through with my friends, my family, and really anyone that I come close to. In fact, as you can imagine, building a company, and my husband travels 4 days a week, or did before COVID, we had to have a village help us raise our family. So we had all these, college kids, teenagers coming over afterwards, helping me with the girls. And many of them now, I've been to their weddings. I've been to baby showers with them. 2 of them are godparents to our kids. Wow. So it's that example of, really having this broad definition of family and being an inclusive, being as inclusive as you can with all of the people in your life is really what she brought to me.
That's so beautiful. Oh my gosh. I really love that. Okay. So what is one lesson that your parents imparted on you that you implement with your kids today?
So many. I think the one that comes to mind most is, really just being open about who you are as a person. Meaning, at dinner, when we talk, if Andre's having a bad day, my husband, he'll talk about it, or talk about, he's at McKinsey. So he'll talk about, there's something that was a challenge for him. He'll share that. If I'm having a hard time at home, or I'm dealing with a hard issue personally, or a friend has hurt me, being really open to sharing the ups and downs of life and not feeling like it makes you human as a parent and approachable. And so I think that also helps my kids understand that you don't have to be perfect. You're going to have ups and downs, and it's okay. And you can get through those ups and downs.
Yes. So I wanted to get into your fervent passion for earth science, because that was your major.
Yes.
What compelled you to go full speed ahead in pursuing that field of study?
So because I grew up in nature, really, on this farm, I was always, and we were close to Yosemite. So our big summer holiday was always camping in Yosemite. And so I just grew up in the mountains. And so for me, it was a natural extension to think about how might I spend more time understanding. I used to like to think that the way I thought about it, at least, was I studied geology, geophysics, is that rocks are kind of like a scrapbook of our environment. They hold these histories and stories. And so I was always interested in understanding the stories of rocks. Like what was life like at this period of time?
Yes.
And so as a geologist, you get to unlock these stories and understand these points in time, in history and what informed that in our environment. And I love that. I love science. I think, if I'm being really honest, I lacked a lot of confidence in writing, and so I felt that, okay, well, maybe I'm not as strong a writer, but I can certainly do math. And so, education was not a straightforward journey for me. I went to community colleges out of high school, and then made my way ultimately to UCLA, but it was not a straight path. And so, it took a lot of confidence for me to feel like I could do some of the things I ended up doing. But math was certainly, and science was certainly a love from an early age.
I'm just amazed at how much your breadth of knowledge across many spheres. And I feel like, it's a testament to your work ethic and how you have this insatiable curiosity.
Thank you.
And yeah. And I think, I was reading on your website, it says you've worked your entire life and you proved naysayers wrong along the way. In middle school, you cleaned houses to earn money. And at 17, as you mentioned, you attended community college. You worked at bars and restaurants to pay off tuition and have some spending money, and then transferred to UCLA. While working 20 hours a week or more with a marriage and divorce along the way, you proved everyone wrong. So you followed your major of geology and geophysics, and then became valedictorian for the Earth and Space Science Department at UCLA. You were the first person to graduate summa cum laude from the department in UCLA's 75-year history. And you went on to continue your education with a Kennedy Fellowship at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. It's just, I'm getting chills. How incredible.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, it was a lot of hard work. I think that when I look back at the influences in my life, growing up in a tiny little country town, I didn't have a view of all these different jobs. I had a view of the kind of jobs I knew that were close to my world, right? So I knew about some basic jobs, farming.
Blue collar.
Yeah, exactly. And so I didn't understand, and I still remember the story. My roommate at Harvard, I said, oh, what'd you do before coming? She said, oh, I worked in banking. And I said, oh, my mom worked in banking too. And she was like, oh, really? What bank? I said, well, she worked at Wells Fargo. And she said, oh, I worked at Goldman Sachs. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I don't think we have those in California. We don't have that bank in California. And she's like, no, I'm pretty sure they have that in San Francisco and Los Angeles. I'm like, I don't think so. I don't know. I've never seen it. No one has their checking account there.
Right.
And then we were having this parallel conversation, and she's like, well, it was really hard. I worked all the time, and I just got really burned out. I was like, God, that's so different than my mom. She got off at 5, she was able to be home by 5:15, and we were literally having a different conversation, and then she was like, I think you might have a different idea of that kind of banking, but I had no idea there were different types of banking. I thought all types of banking involves sitting, as the teller, taking money, your cash or your checks, and giving you money back. Exactly. That was like my concept of banking at that point.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think that's great. And it's refreshing to hear that, because when you come from a big metro, you know about iBanking much earlier on, know?
Yeah.
So you've always wanted to work in public service, though. I feel like that has been, definitely part of your trajectory. And you took an uncharted path graduating as a Kennedy Fellow. So how did you weave in public service into your career?
So it's a great question. So I've always I had a view when I was at the Kennedy School and even before the Kennedy School that it was important in my life for me to move between working in a for-profit business environment to working in a nonprofit environment to working really in government. And I always felt like I would be a better leader by having that experience between the public, the private, and the government sectors. And so that was always my intention, but at the Kennedy School, it was very atypical to do anything in business. So I actually started at McKinsey, which is where I met my husband. I was in the LA office. He was in the New York office. But I always knew I was super interested in McKinsey and learning those skills, but I always kind of knew I wanted to move between these different paths. And right after 9/11, I took a secondment. I took a leave of absence to kind of work right after 9/11 in the relief efforts in New York City. And so I joined the Robin Hood Foundation. At that time, they were right downtown, when the planes hit, and they really did a lot of the relief efforts. And so I really wanted to be part of that. My husband also did the same. So we both worked for different NGOs, but really helping out with the 9/11 relief efforts. And from there, it was really natural for me. I always cared about education. It mattered to me. Education was hard for me. It really was not easy. And so I always felt in my heart that it shouldn't be this hard. That was just really very simply, I felt that education shouldn't be this hard for kids. And so I was a Pell Grant kid, and everything came with a lot of effort. And so my mission early in my career was to figure out, how can I help other children make it a little bit easier, a little bit simpler for parents and for children? And how do you give opportunities and access, and how can you think about expanding horizons for children that maybe don't have that opportunity like I didn't have when I was growing up.
Right. Wow. I love that. I love that you're constantly trying to find a way to fill those gaps.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that was really Homer. Homer was really born out of that same passion, coupled with, I had my oldest daughter, Anya, at the time. I had 3 babies, and oldest daughter, Anya, was struggling with reading. And I had access to every expert, Kanika. I had this incredible literacy advisory board, and everyone said that it wasn't anything they trusted for parents. There was a lot of great stuff there for teachers, but, really in the parenting space, it was more entertainment, edutainment kind of products. And so there was nothing that they really trusted, and meanwhile, we were sitting in meetings with, in Mike Bloomberg's administration with Joel Klein, looking at outcomes for kids, and we knew that if children weren't strong readers by 3rd grade, it was not impossible, but very difficult to recover from that. And so I thought, could you build this business that could really help parents and really empower parents to help their children, give them the best start possible?
Right. When did you come up with the concept for Homer?
I mean, it started, I don't know that I've ever told anyone this story. My husband and I were talking about the other day. It really started very simple because my daughter was struggling reading. So I thought, there has to be something I can do, but I'm not a trained professional in reading. Right. So I kind of became obsessed, and started figuring this out at night, after, my day job was running the fund. I'd put the kids to bed, and then I would start to do all this research and try and figure it out. So I thought, well, what if I just start by creating like little leveled books, like little leveled readers, so that she could start reading some very basic words to sentences to like a paragraph to like a short chapter. The very original concept was like, let me just create 5 little books. And from there, then of course, because I get very ambitious quickly, I'm like, no, we can do more than that. Let's solve the entire reading, crisis. And no, we can even do more than that. We're going to do math, and we're going to do social emotional learning, and kind of as I got into it, I got so inspired. I got really inspired, Kanika, in the early days. I would read every single support email that came in, and I would personally answer them.
We all love a legendary comeback, and Degree Original Cool Rush is back and better than ever. Cool Rush isn't just a scent, it's a movement, a fan favorite that delivers bold, fresh vibes and all-day sweat protection. Whether you have a man that spends hours in the gym, heads into the office early, or is just trying to stay fresh on a long day, Cool Rush has their back. Head to your local Walmart or Target and grab Degree Cool Rush, the fan favorite scent from the world's #1 antiperspirant brand.
A message from McAfee. Wondering why the post office is texting you, or why you owe thousands of dollars in toll fees? Because someone's trying to scam you. The good news? McAfee can help. With McAfee's award-winning scam detection, it's easy to tell what's real and what's fake over text, in your inbox, and online. If they're
You want a free gift.
Seriously? If they're faking it, they're not making it past us. Get award-winning scam detection today. McAfee.com/keepitreal.
And I would be sitting there, from midnight to 3 a.m., just like with tears in my eyes, hearing the stories of parents, parents for whom, similar to me, they didn't know what to do. Their child was struggling, or their child was a little unsure of themselves. They weren't very confident, or they were just kind of uninterested. And hearing parents use the product and discover the breakthrough that they had with their child, everything from children with learning differences and how well the product worked for that, children who were younger or older, children in another country. We had this woman who was living, who had adopted a young boy from Kenya, and she was living in France, and she was trying to teach him English. And so she was using Homer to teach him English, families in Malaysia, and so I would just pour through it, and my heart would grow, and I'd be like, okay, this is the right thing to be focusing on. And how do we just do more of it to support families?
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. How did you come up with the name?
So it wasn't Homer Simpson, to be clear. That is not what inspired me.
Not at all.
So my framework, my philosophy on parenting and motherhood is that it's this very nonlinear journey. And it's really nonlinear. Like it's so circuitous, it's up and down and right and left. And people think about life in this very linear way. Like you start at one point, you go to this point, and it's a straight line,
Right.
and it's just not the truth. Right. And I
Yes.
think the moment you think it's the truth, then you're disappointed.
Yeah.
So I always knew that learning was like that. Learning, has its ups and downs. There are moments that are slower, moments that are faster, moments where you dig into dinosaurs, and moments where you want to do other things. And motherhood is much the same. And so it was a nod to the epic journey, Homer.
Yes.
And also what I liked in it is it had the word home in it. And so I really liked the
So
idea.
not Odyssey for that reason.
Yeah, it was like, I really always in my heart wanted to serve families. I never, even though we have teachers and I'm so excited to get classroom products, but my heart isn't really helping families because that's where I feel like the biggest opportunity is.
Yes. Oh, that makes so much sense. That's really great. I love how symbolic that is. So what was that driving force that took you from corporate and public service to becoming a bootstrapping entrepreneur?
I mean, it was really lonely, but I would say the first few months. And it was really hard to, you're starting, it's a hard thing to just invent something out of nothing, right? You know what I mean? Yes. So it's kind of like, where do you start? Right. And I was by myself, I didn't, in the very early days, it was just me. I tried to break it down into small pieces. And I think that, again, this is a lot like parenting. When something feels overwhelming, you just break it into its smallest pieces. And you think about, okay, can we do this one piece? And then after we do this one piece, we can do the next piece and just keep kind of building from there.
Right.
And then raising my first round of capital was, enormously time consuming and really exciting and challenging at the same time, because I think at that time, female founders, there really wasn't, of course there were female founders, but it wasn't a thing at that time. Now I'm so proud of my sister-in-law, Nisha Dua. She's, running Built by Girls Ventures, which is focused on female founders. And there are many others who are doing some great work and supporting women-oriented businesses, mostly consumer businesses. And so, but at that time, none of that existed.
Right.
So, kind of trying to chart that pathway, and not, there were some groups that were wonderful that were kind of older women that wanted to contribute back to younger women, that would, kind of pool their funds together and give money to you. But traditional VC it was tough. It wasn't, it was, we did it, I did it eventually, but it wasn't easy. It was not clear always, like, why are you sitting across the table from me? You're not a traditional entrepreneur.
Yes.
I didn't fit the profile of a traditional entrepreneur.
Right.
And then once they knew I had 3 children at home, small children at home, that was also challenging.
Yeah. Where you feel you're being kind of tested or questioned.
Yes. Questioned in different ways than I think if I wasn't, a woman with small children.
Right. Absolutely. I wanted to touch upon the array of apps that are out there for kids.
Sure.
I'm talking kids are even more familiar with Khan Academy, ABC Mouse, and a slew of others. What makes Homer different?
There are a few things that make it different, and there are great products out there. So one of the things that makes it different is what meant to me in creating Homer. I didn't want to just create a supplement, which is sort of helps pass the time doing something educational. I really wanted it to add a lot of value to a child because remember, I grew up in the country where you were just outside playing all day, right?
Right.
And so the view I always had is this has to be, you still have to go outside and play a lot. But if you're not going to be outside just digging in the dirt, I want this to be really, really valuable. And I want this to be something that actually works. So, this is a product that actually teaches kids to read. It's not supplemental. So it actually teaches a child step by step to read as if it's a teacher with the child. It's not just assuming that they're getting teaching instruction in the classroom and then it's helping them outside of that. The second thing that makes it different is that it's proven to work. We were the first product in the market to take our app and have it tested independently. And we had a third party do a double-blind randomized study. The former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Education, she came back saying, I'm so blown away. Kids are kindergarten ready after using it 15 minutes a day. It blew my mind away how powerful it was with these kids. But the third thing is, it's so important to me parenting's hard. It's confusing. There's so much noise in the market. It's so hard to know, do I do this now or do I do that? Or should I spend time on this? What matters? And so part of our mission is to say, we want to be a partner to parents in helping really simplify things and help you understand what really matters and providing products and services. So we have physical toys, we have kits. They're all lined around skills that we believe really matter in these early years. The other piece that's so important to us is supporting parents. And so how can we help continue to support parents on this journey, through other educational supports, helping them really understand what does and doesn't matter. So it's apps, it's physical toys, and then it's also parent support.
That's wonderful. I feel like I want to give my own testimonial because I find Homer to be an extension of what I'm doing with my one-on-one time. Yes. Yeah. And I think that that's what's so important for parents to know. Our philosophy, my husband and I, after kind of really thinking about our perception of reading, he gave me a good insight. He said, we can really bore down on the phonics and try to teach about stringing letters together and learning to read. But the minute that becomes painful for the child or they're not amenable to it, they have lost their love for reading.
That's correct. Yeah.
Right. And so that's the one thing that keeps their intrigue is the stories. And so he was saying how let's focus on bedtime stories. Let them pick the books. We do that. And even if it's the same one over and over, and have them feel that sense of, imagination and joy through the process, the storytelling process. And with Homer, the stories, my kids gravitate to the stories. My daughter watched Angelina Ballerina this morning.
Yes, exactly.
And so that's what it is. It's like the princess stories. She gets to click on princess.
Yes, exactly. But that's important.
Yes,
that's right. Because it's interesting to her.
Exactly. And the fact that you have specialized it in such a way where my child who loves dinosaurs gets that. My child who loves trucks and excavators gets that.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And they gravitate towards that. And it's exactly what we would have provided them as parents, the books we would have given them as parents. And now they're doing it themselves on the app.
Well, you have exactly the right philosophy. So your approach is what I would recommend to any parent, which is, let the child show their interest, right? And because our job is to make sure that you're scaffolding all of this so that as they're interested, you're providing those opportunities for them to explore their interests. Right. And you don't want learning to feel like a chore. 100%. So it really has to come from a place where they find, and children are naturally curious. So you're really finding these opportunities to allow them to be curious, to explore and build their skills. And that's why doing it, you hit it right on, but allowing kids to explore it through their interests is one of the most powerful ways of learning.
Yes. Yeah, it's really great. What was it like, becoming a mom for the first time?
I mean, it was terrifying. I was a motherless mom, right? I didn't have my mom. My mom died of breast cancer, and her sister also passed away from breast cancer. And so I had my husband's mother. And so I became like her other daughter, and she became my mother, even though she lived in Sydney, and, and our cultures were so different, right? She grew up in this kind of quasi-arranged marriage, right? In Indian family. And so her journey was completely different, immigrating into Sydney. But it was my first daughter, Anya, and it's a great success story. So I will say the success story, but she cried solid for 3 months. So I was expecting motherhood to be this just like sunshine and walking around with the babies naked and everyone's happy. And she literally didn't stop crying. So we would invite friends over to sit with her on a bouncy ball, while we like, it was tough. And then my husband was traveling, so I was alone with her. So I was counting the bricks on the back of the brownstone next door, while I was trying to rock her.
Right.
So she'd start to cry and I'd start to cry, and then we'd both be crying,
Mm-hmm.
And so it was the opposite of what I had imagined motherhood to be, And so I felt like a total failure. I felt, what am I doing wrong? I can't do anything right, and you have so much negativity around you. Well, your child must be colicky because you're eating the wrong thing when you're nursing, or, all of this noise. I mean, eventually she grew out of it by around 4 months, but she is, now applying to colleges. It's so hard to imagine. She's driving. She's having her 17th birthday this weekend. Wow. And she has started her own nonprofit called Gen Z Identity Lab. And she's one of the foremost speakers around Gen Z and identity and how to think in a more nuanced way about what does it mean to be part of Gen Z and what are their beliefs and customs and habits and how do they shop and how do they vote and so she's really, and she was an absolute nightmare the first 3 months, so I like to say, that
that's
it
so
ends
encouraging.
Well. Yes. And she was stubborn as heck her whole, she was the kid who like, it's freezing outside. We're going to have to put our pants on. She's like, I'm not wearing pants today, and so you just like, okay, well, you're going to go outside with nothing on your legs. So, but it was circuitous. I would say my job as a mom is not to make my kids happy. My job is to help them experience the entire range of emotions that they're going to experience. They're going to experience loss and hardship and joy and pride and embarrassment and failure and all of those things. And my job is to make sure that they're supported as they're experiencing all of these emotions. Right. And so that was a little bit my philosophy, is that I didn't want to protect them from those experiences. And we did have a number. My oldest daughter, Anya, had a lot of health problems in middle school and had to get pulled out of school. And she's been treated by a lot of different doctors. And so she's had this really intense health journey. And for any mom who has a sick kid, it destroys you. It's so hard. But yet, look what she's doing now, and so and she still has some health challenges, but, she's the strongest person I've ever met, and she has this personal will and strength and sensibility and maturity because we allowed her. We didn't protect her from that hardship, when she was lying in bed at night saying, Mommy, am I going to die? Am I sick? Like, am I going to live through this? We had to say, I think so, but we don't know. Things were pretty difficult there for a while. And she was mad that the doctors didn't know how to treat her. And she was mad at us about that. And you can't protect them from all of that, right? She had to experience the fallibility of humanity, that not everyone has an answer for everything, and this is some of life. The other kind of piece I always like to share with parents is one of the things I did, and that really carried with me from when I was growing up, is I always really wanted my kids to be close to each other. So when we take holidays, we wouldn't travel with other families because it was always a time for the girls to spend time with each other on the weekends. I always would say, go play with your sisters, you can do whatever you want, just go play with let the sisters play. And so they always grew up playing together. And eventually they ended up creating what's called the Sisters Code, which is their own code of living. Okay. And so when they get mad at each other, we cannot get involved. There's like a whole system, a governance system, and there's always an arbiter. So like if the baby, Eilish is not a baby anymore, she's, 11. But if the two older ones are fighting over the sweatshirt that someone stole, Isla is the arbiter, and she hears both sides and she takes it under consideration. And then she's like, well, look, Anya, I think that you were wrong here. And Siona, I think that you should have done this differently. Now let's close this. And everyone has to agree to resolve it and move on.
Can you send this to me?
We have never, my husband and I have never been involved in an argument.
I love it. Yes. Oh my goodness. That's brilliant. And okay. I could talk to you for hours, but my husband and I had this very conversation 2 days ago because we had enrolled our third in school and he's in a different class and the twins are together. And we said, whatever we can do, we want to foster an unbreakable bond between the siblings.
Yes.
If they need to team up against us.
Yes. Let them.
We are fine with that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Just don't choose, I don't know, your friends or outsiders over your family.
Yeah. And we used to have these like little repeatable messages. I'd always tell the girls, I'd say like, at the end of the day, when mom and dad are off and you're in college or living your life, you're going to have your sisters.
Yes.
And this kind of noise is not going to be there with a particular friend who's giving you a hard time. Focus on your relationship with your sisters. Lean on them for advice.
Yes, exactly.
And so that's what they do.
Yeah. The problem solver in you tried to find a cure for your mom's cancer.
Yeah.
So, I mean, tell us about that because it's really incredible.
Well, it was a huge surprise. My mom came to visit me. I was at Harvard and she came to visit me for the first time. She had never traveled really other than when my mom and dad were overseas. Once they moved to the country, she had never traveled. So she was her first trip really out east. And she traveled and we went from Boston down to New York and we had just the best time ever. We stayed at like little Motel 6s and travel lodges and it was amazing. And what I didn't know at that time is she was sick and she didn't know that she was sick. So that was like November. And by January, she had been diagnosed with breast cancer. But by March, she passed away. So it was very, very fast. And she didn't have health care. And so I'd wheel her to the hospital and I'd be like, you have to look after her. Something's wrong. They said, oh, she's just depressed or something's going on. And so it was I think the challenges in many smaller towns is the lack of access to quality healthcare. And that was a great example of it. And so I was angry. I was really angry that I felt like she was in pain for so long and there was nothing I could do. I was her person, because she was not married. And so I was the person who making all these medical decisions, end of life decisions, what to do with her. I'm like, I had no idea what to do with any of these, how to make any of these decisions.
Yeah.
But there were some bright spots. When she passed away, right before we were taking her home for hospice care, she couldn't see anymore, but there was a little pink tulip on beside her hospital bed. And she said, I have some bad news for you. And she was telling me that she was not going to make it. And so we, of course, my brother and I knew at that time, but it was her time to say goodbye. And so she said, can you hand me that flower? And she said, when you were born, you were the most beautiful child and I will love you always and forever. And she gave me this little pink tulip. And so every year on her birthday, I give pink tulips to my friends and my children. And so we moved to Miami not long ago and I met some wonderful women. And this past March, on her anniversary of her death, it's now been 22 years, I sent some pink tulips. And I was like, it's all about just sharing the love. Like she was an incredible woman. My brother and I left and she said, look after Greg. I mean, Greg, meanwhile, was like 18 months younger. And I'm like, who's looking after me in all of this, Right. But I looked after him. And so we were in California and I met Andre and he's like, you've got to move to New York. New York's where everything's happening. And I said, I can't move to New York unless my brother moves with me. And he's like, what are you talking about? You're in your 20s. And I said, no, but I can't go anywhere without my brother.
Yes.
And so I said, Greg, you've got to go apply to NYU and go to grad school and do this. And so he's like, okay, so we sat there and we wrote his application and, together and, we did, and he moved with me, and we spent every dinner together. And I think it's just that there's so much, I don't know that as a mother, as a person who lost her mother, moms have any idea when you have like the power of love you have for your children,
Grabbing the holidays by the boughs with Duluth. Step 1, hire a mall Santa to handle snow removal.
Ho, ho, ho! My sciatica.
Step 2, hit Duluth Trading and load up on fire hose pants, buck naked underwear, pocket pack bibs, free swinging flannel, and all kinds of ingenious gear you won't find anywhere else. Grab the holidays by the boughs and shop Duluth Trading, online and in store.
Okay, only 10 more presents to wrap. You're almost at the finish line. But first... there, the last one. Enjoy a Coca-Cola for a pause that refreshes.
It's just, as I see my 17-year-old now thinking about leaving and going to college, she said to me in this quiet moment the other night, she's like, I don't know what I'm going to do without you. And she said, I'm ready to go, but I don't want to go to bed and not know that you're not down the hallway from me. I'm not ready for it, And so it shaped me and it formed me. And I was shattered, Kanika, if I'm being really honest. I had to I'm a different person. I think when you go through these very traumatic experiences, it's not like you get back to your old self, like you're actually evolve into a different person. And I went to a really hard place. It was really hard for me for a number of years after she died. Nothing made sense to me in the world. I didn't understand how these things could happen and how systems could be so broken, and really how things can change so unexpectedly, like one day everything's fine and the next day it's not, but luckily Andre's mom was really my next mom, and I learned all the Indian recipes from her. I learned how to cook chicken curry and chole and chutney and chapatis and I know how to shop at the Indian stores. But then she passed away unexpectedly in a car accident in India 3 years ago. And so it's just sort of both my husband and I have now experienced these two sides of losing our mother, one, very, very unexpectedly in a car accident, and one cancer. But for me, when my husband's mom passed away, I felt like I was losing my mom all over again, and so it was... But their memories hold on, right? And that's with the pink tulips, and Andre's mom, brought us all of her cooking, and so every night when I cook Indian, I mostly cook Indian because I didn't have a mom to teach me anything else. So I'm really an Indian child. I'm really a South Asian child. I have all the saris. I have the little dish pan with all the little spices.
Yes. Yeah. The masala dish.
Exactly. I have the masala dish with all my spices, and you can
put like turmeric in anything.
You can put turmeric. I put turmeric in everything, eggs, everything. Yes. It's amazing. My tea. Right. Exactly. It's amazing.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I love that. I love that you fostered such a close bond with the mothers in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I wanted to touch upon how you and your husband have very demanding careers. And, for my listeners, there's no such thing as a work-life balance. I feel like that's a big time fallacy, but you decide what your non-negotiables are and where you show up for your family and for your kids and then for your career. So what are your non-negotiables? How are you kind of making it a point to show up?
So I was pretty clear early on, my non-negotiables. I don't sweat the small stuff. Like most of the time my kids went to school with very messy hair. Sometimes they'd brush their teeth, sometimes they wouldn't. So we'd always have gum in the car, in case anyone forgot to brush their teeth,
right.
And so, because I was like, I'm going to get a lot of stuff wrong, but I'm going to just at least get them to school on time. But our non-negotiables as a family were always very simple. We kept it very simple. One is we wanted family dinners together, and we always had that without devices. Okay. So we just really made the table a conversation table, and we do rosebud thorn. We would do, how was your day? We had to play all these we just have fun. Who read the newspaper? Who knows what's happening in the news? But we really wanted to be conversations. And the second thing is we always had Sunday brunches together. We would go to Rucola, the same place, and we'd bring our Uno cards, and we'd always play Uno.
Aww.
And the third is we always took holidays together just as family. We would really try to just keep it to the five of us and really spend quality time together. We'd go to Australia every Christmas and really kind of think about these little traditions. And these traditions, it turns out, are really powerful in the memory of a child.
Yes.
And what I learned both being a mom and talking to psychologists is these repeatable experiences really shape a child's memory. It's the place you go in Maine and it doesn't have to be fancy. The thing is, like, kids don't need fancy. They just need the comfort of knowing this is going to happen then. Like, we get to go to Australia at Christmas. It's who we are as a family. It's how we identify ourselves.
Yes. Oh, that's wonderful. Kids that have been through some sort of adversity are that much more stronger and resilient. We're living in a generation where we literally have things at our fingertips. How do we, whether it's teaching the value of the dollar or create situations that we grew up in that were, adverse in some way for our kids now who literally can have everything.
Yeah.
You don't want them to grow up entitled or lazy.
Yes.
And it's like, how do we do that, simulate that?
It's super hard. I mean, I think you're constantly fighting things. We try really hard to give them money that they earn. They still have to do their chores to earn the money. And even when they want something, we try not to have it be the immediate, so if they're in a store and they say, I want this, I'm like, okay, well, that's why you have your spending money, and you break it once in a while because you do, and that's okay too. But on average, even though we can buy the magazine in the airport, right, we would say, is that necessary? Like, is this necessary? And we try and talk early on about why having more things is not always the right thing. Having fewer things that you love more is a better philosophy. So we tried instead of, because otherwise you're like, no, all the time, right? So we tried to anchor it. I struggled with this, Kanika, because I was noticing that the kids are like, well, so-and-so's got those shoes. Why can't I have those shoes? And I'm like, well, and they're like, but if they can afford it, we can afford it. I'm like, well, how do you know? First of all, and second, exactly. And second, maybe we just don't think that's the right thing, to have that kind of brand or something like that when you're that young, And so Andre and I would talk and be like, when you earn your own money and you have a job and you choose to spend your money in that way, you can do that. It's a give and take, and so we try to use birthdays and holidays to go let them indulge a bit more on things, but not have it be the everyday thing, right? So that you're, and the one thing we did do, because it was getting to be an issue, we sat down and we said, let's create a family mission and a set of values, because it felt like it was getting into a yes, no all the time. And you're constantly being bombarded with asks and you're always saying no. And then you get tired of being the person who's always saying no. And they're upset then. So we decided to anchor these things in a set of core values for the family. And it allowed us to say, instead of saying no, is, well, do you think that's consistent with our values? And so it pushes the question back on them. And then they would say, oh, yeah, you're right. That's probably not consistent with our values. And so let's skip it this time then, maybe, And so even something like let's have fewer things that we love more, And so I even say this today to my littlest, she's like, I really need this squishy pet thing that I don't even understand. This was like last week. She's like, I have to have it. Everyone has this thing that you can squish. I don't even know what it's called anymore. But,
oh my goodness.
And I'm like, okay, but is that in the philosophy of have fewer things that you love more? She's like, oh yeah, you're right. And I'm like, okay, well, just like, let's wait, let's wait and see if that's really a need right now.
Yeah. In an article on Thrive Global, you advise parents to reject perfection. And in the quote, you say, it's great to get the next reward, but more important to build confidence. We need to push back on the desire for instant gratification. Moments of challenge and discomfort are an opportunity to build resilience. Both at work and at home, don't be afraid to show your struggles. It helps demonstrate that confidence is a long game. So I love that. And I wanted to just touch on this, this philosophy of rejection and failure.
So one of my observations from my time in the New York City public schools and then time with a number of educators is that it's very easy as a parent when your child's young to want to make them confident, right? And so the pattern that you can get into easily is they bring their homework home and you look at it and you're like, oh, well, do you think you did this correctly? And you'll point to something and you'll kind of guide them a little bit or wink or even more directly, like, I think this is wrong. Why don't you go do it again?
Right.
The challenge with doing that is that there are two challenges. One is that a teacher doesn't really know your child's skill and where they are to help them. The second is it ends up creating a crutch for the child so that they're not ever getting anything wrong. And so what I used to do with my kids early on is I never opened up their backpack. I never looked at their homework at all.
Yes.
If they forgot their homework, they had to get in trouble with the teacher.
It's on them. Yeah.
It's on them. If they didn't do well, it was on them. And so what that meant was, because it's pretty low stakes when you're in kindergarten, first, second grade, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
But it built this sense of responsibility because, they didn't want to disappoint their teacher. And so they learned both the executive functioning habits. I need to put my homework in. I need to check my homework. I need to do my homework. And they learned how to correct mistakes. And most importantly, the teachers really understood where my children were and where they needed extra support, right? Because if they needed extra support in a particular concept, it wasn't me at home trying to teach them. It was really the teacher teaching them.
Yes.
And I think that that's a mistake often that parents make because they want their child to go into the classroom, with their best possible work.
Right.
But I think it ultimately ends up backfiring later on because kids don't develop those skills early, the executive functioning, the learning that, okay, if I didn't get it all right, what do I have to do tomorrow to do better?
Yes, big time. Can I tell you a funny anecdote?
Yeah.
So a friend of mine worked at HR at Disney. She said on many occasions, candidates would, once they, had their interview, have their mom call to do the negotiating of the salary.
That's crazy.
She would be like, what is going on?
Exactly. That is crazy.
Yeah, you don't want that.
No,
you
don't.
And you're a 20-something child, no.
And
however
you're
we
right. And that
my husband, the apron strings now.
My husband works with a lot of heads of colleges and universities, and they say the same thing, that, the kid doesn't get into the college and they get phone calls from their parents like, why didn't you accept my child? They're like, because I didn't make it. You know what I mean? It's going to be okay, And so it's just like, that is going to be a problem. It creates anxiety. The consequence of that is it creates anxiety in children because they don't learn the coping skills early on.
Right.
And so the best thing we can do is kind of let them be independent and learn this in the context, and learn it in really safe situations early on, and not, it's the opposite of helicopter parenting, right? Allowing them to fail.
Right. Exactly. If you can tell us about a mom sense moment, and as you know, the show is kind of predicated upon this intuition that kicks in when you become a first-time mom or dad. So when was a time that you recall where you just trusted your mom sense?
Recently. So this is a longer story for another time. It'll be our next time, Kanika. But I woke up at 4 a.m. in the morning one morning, and I've only done this twice to my husband. The first time I was like, I'm pregnant. I went to the bathroom and I'm like, wake up, I'm pregnant. And he was like, it's 4 a.m. Go back to bed. I'm like, no, this is the best news ever. And he said, go back to bed and we'll talk about it when I wake up. And so the second time I did it was 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. And I just had this feeling that the big city life wasn't for my family anymore. It was the best thing for them when they were little, but it was really starting to wear on my kids, the commute to school, the not having the outdoor space, not being in nature. And so I had this incredible feeling that I had to change their environment. So I woke up at 4 and I was like, we're going to move to Miami. And he was like, are you crazy? I don't even know anyone in Miami.
Right.
I said, I know, but I love Miami. And whenever we have a chance, it's so pretty. And it's like Sydney.
Yes,
I said,
it's sort of like,
it's like America's Sydney. And he's like, well, that's all true, but it's 4 a.m. Let's talk about it later. And so he tells the story that, when we got up at 6 or 6:30, and he said, it's not the worst idea. And that was like a little bit of the door opened for me.
Yeah.
And so then by the end of the day, I said, I talked to my friend and she connected me with this friend and we found some schools and it's not too late. And I think we can do it this year. We're not too far past the deadline. And then within 2 weeks, we had the kids in schools.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And we didn't know anybody in Miami.
Right.
The whole family picked up. My daughter was in 9th grade. I had a 10th grader, an 8th grader, and then a 5th grader. They were all being kind of picked up, and they had only lived in one house. They had only ever been to one school. And I just felt like we needed change. Like we needed some change.
Yes.
And it's been great.
Yeah. I'm so glad. That's amazing that you went with your gut instinct. And I'm a Miami fan as well. I went to UM for grad school. So lived right off of Red Road and loved my drives on Route 1, no matter how much traffic there was.
So
it's like,
beautiful.
This is gorgeous. Yeah.
It's so beautiful.
I don't know how anyone can
I know.
not like this. Yeah. It's a beautiful place to raise your family.
I said to my kids, I want to be somewhere where I can walk outside barefoot as much as possible.
Yes, exactly. All year long.
All year long. Exactly.
Yeah. Let's not forget our quote of the day.
Is there a quote that you live by?
So when my mom was saying goodbye, she held Greg and I really close, and she said, this was on her last day in the hospital before we took her to hospice. She said, always treat people the way you wish to be treated. She said, if there's only one thing you remember of me and from me, that is the way I want you to live your life. It really was how she lived her life. And so I've always tried to embody that, that I always want to be that person that people say they felt treated really well by, that they felt respected them, included them, that I'm a kind person, that I inspire in some small way, and that you leave this world and people feel that in some ways connected to you, at that time. So so that's been my motto, just, one person at a time. If I can just treat people really wonderfully, I feel like that is a way of living.
Oh, that's so sweet. And you do that. You're living up to.
Thank you.
Thank you. 100%.
Thank you.
It's now time for Mom Haul, when we share products we love.
So is there a product that you're loving right now that's
Kanika, I buy too many products is the problem. I see something and I'm like, I have to try that cream. Of course I have to try that cream. I have so many creams, but no, I have a couple of things. One is I just bought 2 weeks ago, the Remarkable tablet. It's pretty new. It's a way of actually writing. It feels like paper, but it's digital. And so it's been great for note taking, and you can email your notes and you can convert it to text easily.
Oh, that's
because I'm such a paper person. I like writing physically. So the Remarkable tablet. Yeah, exactly. It's great. I just got it 2 weeks ago. I'm in love with it. I also, when I moved to Miami, I bought the new, I think it's new-ish, the Jo Malone diffuser, the Myrrh and Tonica one. It's black and it smells, it reminds me of a little bit of an Indian home. It has some of the musky smells and some of the citrus. I love it. And then I'm obsessed with the face cream. I think it's Augustus Bader.
Yes.
The blue bottle.
Yep. Yeah. Bobby Brown said the same thing. She said this Bader cream is
insane.
Reverses time. Yeah.
My husband and I both use it. It sits between us, and he's like, that's my cream. That's my cream. That's my cream. He's like, I'm the first one who got it. I'm like, I'm the one who really needs it. He was actually the first one who got it.
Yeah.
And then my cheap product that I really love are blue handy wipes. I discovered them here in Miami, but you can get them at Costco or Publix here. And they're just reusable paper towels. They're as old can be, and you can buy them dirt cheap. They're a couple pennies per, but they're better than a sponge because they don't smell.
Oh,
they're
nice.
just like little blue wipes. And you kind of toss them out, I guess, after about a week, but they don't end up smelling like a sponge does.
Right. Oh, that's good to know. And it's sustainable.
Exactly. That's right.
Oh,
so those are my hauls lately.
I love it. And where can my listeners find you and Homer?
So learnwithhomer.com is our website, and our Instagram, where we have a lot of tips for parents. We have a lot of great parent resources on our website. Personally, also on my Instagram is stephanie.dua, and on my LinkedIn. We're constantly kind of trying to improve our products for parents. So we'd love to get feedback anytime.
Wonderful. Well, now on to our surprise.
Yes, I'm excited.
Yes. Yeah. Stephanie and I are very, very excited to share that Homer and That's Total Mom Sense have partnered to bring you At Home with Homer. So I'm sure you have many, many nuggets of wisdom that you learned from today's interview with Stephanie. And now we get to hear from her regularly. This is a weekly segment on the podcast, and it'll be geared towards helping parents problem solve. Whatever the issue is that we're facing, from teaching early learners how to read, to building emotional intelligence in your preschoolers, to raising each of your children differently based on their personality types and more. We're going to get into all of these tangible tips in this short and sweet package segment so that you feel empowered as a parent and can continue to go about child rearing with a sense of joy and not find it to be a challenge. I'm so excited for
We're so excited. Yes, I can't wait to start. We're going to have so much fun.
This is really going to be great.
Yeah.
So, and I'm so thankful that I get to talk to you regularly.
Likewise,
Stephanie.
equally. It's very mutual. You have, just a wealth of information, and I love the spirit with which you're approaching supporting moms. I just think it's beautiful. It's so needed. I think that there's an opportunity anytime we can make things a little bit, help moms feel confident and not so anxious about their choices. I think that's an incredible service, and you're doing it beautifully.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I hope you had as much fun as I did speaking with Stephanie. She is just a wealth of knowledge, and it's so wonderful hearing all of her tips. And, we wanted to start with her personal story and journey. Use my exclusive link so you can visit learnwithhomer.com/MOMSENSE in all caps to redeem your 60-day free trial. Your kids are going to love it, and you get to try out the app, which is available on iOS and Android for 2 months for free. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at Kanika Chadda Gupta, where you'll get even more updates about my upcoming shows. Starting next week, we will have our At Home with Homer segment, so be sure to check that out as well. You can write to me at thatstotalmomsense@gmail.com. I read all of my fan mail and letters, and it's really, really endearing to hear from the community, because you're why I do this. As always, trust your mom sense and dad sense. Stay strong, super parents. See you next time.
That's total mom sense.